Good afternoon, and welcome to this panel session talking about Unity and VR and AR, and it not just being a medium for the games and entertainment industry. Understanding that the fact that majority of the conversations here probably have been around that focus, but the conversation that we're going to have and the panel that we have here today, we're going to discuss how Unity is used not just for entertainment, but also within the architecture, engineering, and construction space. So just a little bit of history. Unity and VIMaec have got a partnership together for distribution, and we're also the technology solution partner for Unity to develop tools and technology for the AEC market space and the industry itself. And we've put together a panel that consists of people from the construction industry, from the architecture design side, and also from the engineering side as well. So we've got Alan on my far left. We've got Anupam, and we've got Will here, and also in the crowd is Mark, but we just couldn't get enough chairs and everything else up here. So Mark is here. He's just behind us in the audience. From that side. So I'm going to give the panel a couple of minutes each to kind of talk about their companies and what they do and how, and then we'll go through the questions from there and discussions. So I'll hand over to Alan first.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Alan Robles. I am from the architecture firm Gensler. We are a global architecture firm, architecture and design firm. We're the biggest in the world. Only because we don't have engineers as part of our staff. There are a lot of other firms that do architecture, but they also do engineering and other services. We're the only kind of pure architecture design firm in the world of our type and the biggest. You can see we've got 44 offices around the world in 9 regions, and we're working in every practice area from education through airports and health and wellness and corporate campuses. But I'm really happy to be here. I had a panel earlier today, maybe some of you went to it, where we were talking about how we're using game engines in more than just the design of our spaces, where we're using them as part of a vision of how these things will be integrated into those spaces of the future. So I'm happy to be here, hopefully get to answer some of your questions.
Just hand over to Anupam from HGA. Do you want to do an intro before I play this? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll do an intro.
Okay.
So I'm Anupam Das. I'm from HGA Architects. We are an architectural and engineering firm, full-service firm. We've got facilities all over the country. We actually have one here in Santa Monica, although I'm based out from the Milwaukee, Wisconsin office. So it's really nice to have the nice weather here. Actually, prior to, so at HGA, I'm a software developer and a visualization specialist. But prior to kind of being in the architectural industry, I spent my entire career in the game development and visual effects industry. Most recently, I was at Industrial Lights and Magic as a technical director. Like many of us here, we saw DK1, and I was so impressed by it, I was blown away that I knew that this could be a tool to solve real-world problems. And I thought that architecture would be a perfect fit, since both platforms are really focused on spatial experiences. Architecture is about spatial experience, and VR is about spatial experience. Can you kind of play the video?
Yeah.
So one of the things that HGA does is design hospitals. That's a primary kind of client of ours, huge, $300 million facilities. So we've been developing tools to really engage architects with caregivers in hospitals to really help optimize spaces like this operating room that you see here, so that a doctor can actually look at an existing design and move things around and really engage with the space before it's built. This really allows us to make sure that when that hospital is built, that everybody who's supposed to be working in there can work in an environment that they're already familiar with, and ultimately provide a great experience for patients and hopefully help them with whatever problems that they have. So I look forward to answering your questions and maybe sharing some of my experience. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Just let this run through. Oh, no, you need that. So as you can see, I mean, the panel have been obviously working, and they've come from different disciplines as well, as we'll find out from Will in a moment. So this is Will Adams from Mortenson Construction. Will?
Yeah, so I'm Will Adams, and I work for Mortenson. We're a large national general contractor. We do a variety of work, probably all the same categories that Gensler does. We're also in like renewable energy, like wind and solar and stuff. And we've been working in VR for a while, but it wasn't until last year, and I came to this conference and got the Vive Pre that, and I was able to bring that back to kind of the people at my office and show them that they realized that this was something that we'd actually be interested in putting in front of a customer. And it's obvious, why that is. Everybody knows what's great about virtual reality. And so we have been working on a variety of projects, from helping our customers' businesses, helping them sell whatever it is that what their key business is, or if it's kind of intercepting the design process and helping out with mock-ups and things like that. So we've been doing that pretty seriously for about a year and a half now. And I actually saw a slide that Alan had in his talk earlier that's fairly similar to this. For us, VR is not like the end goal. The end goal is really to, put in place structures that are going to advance modern society. And so we see this as a component of an overall strategy of, all these things coming together that's going to really improve and help our industry as a whole.
Great. Well, thank you ever so much. So we're going to dive straight into a few questions. But as you can see, the AEC market is really embracing game engines and the technology itself, and it's evolving at a rapid pace. I think this is the first time I've seen the AEC space actually embrace technology like this at such speed. It's still moving slowly, but it's actually faster than other technologies have been adopted. That's the thing. And so in that, I'd like to just start off with the first question, I suppose. What trends are emerging in terms of what your customers are looking for from a VR, AR perspective, and how are you adopting this gaming engines to be applied inside of your workspace?
Well, everybody's has been talking about for some time now, virtual reality and the way that it allows you to gain kind of immediate understanding of what our design proposals are. And we've seen a real jump in our ability to propose things that traditionally we would have had trouble communicating. We've had a real jump in negating the effect of what we call value engineering in our industry, where a client will look at line items within a proposal and just say, well, we really don't need this, or we really don't need that, as it relates to their cost. But when we show them these proposals in VR, there's a lot of times those things get reversed, where they're in a space, absorbing the space, and we say to them, oh, well, by the way, let me show you the things that you cut out in VE. And we light those layers back up, and they see what they're missing, and they say, oh, no, we have to put this back in. So what that's allowing us to do is it's to get a lot closer to what our original design intent, what our proposal for solution was with these clients, and letting us do much better design as a result of achieving a common platform of understanding. And so our clients are looking for these technologies to empower them, to make them better decision makers, and to make them a bigger part of the design process.
This is kind of a complicated question for me, only because I feel like customers are looking for things, but a lot of times they don't know what they're looking for. We spend a lot of our efforts like showing them prototypes and really pushing the technology and showing them what VR can do. So a lot of our customers initially about a year and a half ago thought they could just look through a viewing lens and just kind of visualize a space. But once we started showing them that, no, you can interact, you can open doors, move furniture around, you can literally pretend like you're there and have all the agency that you would if you were really physically in that space. Now we're seeing that customers are actually looking like especially in healthcare, to simulate work environments. How does it feel like to do the job that you're supposed to be doing in a space that hasn't even been built yet? And I think that helps settle a lot of arguments and certainly makes for faster meetings. I think that, and it helps us really iterate a lot quicker, because a lot of kind of arguments about kind of the guesswork when you look at a floor plan or even a really, really nice rendering, it's just you're kind of imagining what that space might be like. If a certain corridor is too wide, or a certain piece of furniture might not be ergonomically a good fit for that space, and just for a couple of seconds, literally getting them into VR can settle those arguments. And the fact that they can literally move things around, it gives them a sense of presence that I think that they're not expecting. And so the more we do this and push the technology, I think the more the customers are looking to engage with us.
I got one. Yeah, so our customers are, typically going to be a project manager from an owner, or directly an owner, and really what they're trying to do is build a facility and have it come in on time and under budget and be a quality facility for their people so that they can run their business efficiently. So they're not really looking for VR or AR. They're looking for the best possible outcome of a facility. And what we can do is help them get to that point, and VR has been a very excellent communication tool. Some of the things that happen during the design construction process is that design gets to a certain point, and then kind of the contractor takes over, and there's still a lot of decisions that need to be made. If those decisions aren't made at the right time or in a timely manner, then it can really have a negative impact on a project. So using VR to communicate what those decisions that need to be made are in a way that everybody can understand is a really big value add to the customer, because they know what they're going to get. Another thing we can do is help the customer's business, and we build a lot of stadiums, for instance, and so it can be very valuable for that customer to either pre-lease nice suites or high-end seats, or get their fan base excited before we actually even start putting work in the ground. So we can provide a very nice custom environment that they can use as a sales tool to kind of improve their business outcome. And it's I think that customers are not really. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. So
okay.
I'll cut myself off.
In regards to how customers interact with yourselves, how important is graphics fidelity and everything else? Because everyone that I've spoken to, we've developed, at VIMaec, we've developed some tools which automate the process of taking Revit into Unity, and we've got our own player which allows you to take, just the as-built model from Revit into a player. How important is graphics fidelity from that perspective? Does it have to be photoreal? Does it have to be, what's the kind of gauge on that?
It really depends on what you're trying to achieve in terms of the level of experience, level of understanding. The things that we've established as kind of breakers of continuity are things like avatars. If the avatar looks fake, the entire space looks fake to the client. We'll remove avatars altogether from spaces because they have a negative impact on the way that the space is appreciated. We're pursuing photorealism as a goal because there's nothing left to interpretation. Yeah. And so this first generation of VR environments is really just like the first step towards that, just that common understanding of what you're seeing. There's still some caveats. But photorealism is really our goal in regards to virtual reality.
Okay.
For us, I think we've had a lot of heated debates about this. For me, coming from a visual effects background, I love beautiful imagery. I've spent many days and hours and months, noodling on pixels on movies and stuff, and it's, I think one thing I'm finding with VR is it's really about establishing a sense of presence, like you're actually there in a space. And because it's all a magic trick, there are many things you can do to do that, and it's not just making something look pretty. Right. So having a level of interaction that seems tangible, the way you do locomotion and making that so it's a comfortable experience for people, sound, all of these things, multiplayer, so you can actually see someone else and you can see their head moving around, you can hear them talking to you. These things kind of fill in the uncanny valley of the things that aren't really maybe possible in VR. So for having a huge environment that's completely photorealistic with dynamic lighting, we just can't get the frame rate at 90 FPS and less than 20 milliseconds. Oh. But that's okay, because a lot of times we're finding that even with a lower level of photorealism, we can get a great amount of interactivity and sort of sense of presence. And presence is really, to me, the ultimate goal as it comes to VR. Whereas, like, I guess you could say photorealism would be a great goal for like a 2D rendering. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So
perfect.
Yeah, I think it's really depends on the use case, like Alan said. You know, for things that are going to be in front of a bunch of customers and they really want to have an accurate representation of their space, obviously it's got to be photoreal. But I also think that there's definitely a lot of ways to approach it, and sometimes the most important thing is just something like ambient occlusion that's just going to make things kind of grounded in the space. So.
And as we're on that topic, and as you've got the microphone, I mean, what limitations do you see, and what technical constraints have you had and challenges that you've had up till now? Because, I mean, the AEC market, or the industry, isn't really, it's not geared for a games engine, right? I mean, the data that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis is significantly higher than what, you know, what comes out of 3D Studio Max or Maya, you know, for what games are built with, or even the entertainment industry use. You guys are using Revit or Rhino and all these other tool sets. What are your limitations, and, you know, how have you overcome those?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the obvious limitations are that we're dealing with giant data sets, and we need, you know, in many cases, we need to have that entire data set in VR, and so it can be a big problem. So, you know, the way we deal with it now is a lot of manual kind of decimation and rebuilding things, which is really a time-intensive and expensive process. So until we're able to kind of have better tools that automate and a better workflow, yep. We're going to have a hard time scaling kind of this process. So that's definitely one. And then also the fragmentation of the different softwares that we use in the AEC industry, and then kind of the stuff that we're borrowing from the game industry. There's not real good ways of passing data through them and kind of round-tripping that data. So right now with Unity, VR tends to be kind of a dead end when you'd really like that to be just part of a circle that's continuous iteration.
Okay, great.
Yeah, you know, having come from a games background, we spend months optimizing levels. Like I've worked on Call of Duty and Medal of Honor and stuff, and we're basically condensing months of hand optimization work to a couple of seconds to get something right out of Revit or SketchUp right into VR. And so solving the content problem, how do you get all that data into VR, for me personally is the #1 technical challenge. I think there are a lot of techniques that kind of originate from game development that can be used to help optimize that process. So without getting into too many technical details, things like static and dynamic batching, streaming, coming up with ways to partition the larger environment into smaller environments or smaller spaces that can be streamed in based on kind of where you are, in kind of the same way that I guess Google Street View and Google Maps and even Google VR, Google Earth VR does it. Those are kind of the things that we're looking at in the next couple of months. Really, the end goal is to be able to have an arbitrarily large amount of data, you know, as a huge building with thousands of rooms and millions of polygons of geometry, and just in a click of a button, being able to jump right in there with no compromise.
Great.
I think the limitations around people and understanding in our industry. You know, we have a lot of architects and designers that have been doing what they've been doing the way they've been doing it for a very long time and have been successful that way. It's really to the point where we have to make these technologies so simple to understand and so simple to leverage that anybody can do it, that you don't have to have a special group doing it somewhere. So that making this a one-button solution that anybody can use is really the biggest limitation right now. The hardware is a limitation right now as well. We have clients that would never put a headset on their heads. on their faces. They just don't have the time. Their time is worth too much money. So all of these instances where we got to get them in a room and put on a rig and do all of these things, they're non-starters. So making the hardware easier to access, easier to implement, increasing all the technical details of things like field of view and affinity, resolution, and then just educating the people that are using it in the process of designing.
Great, thank you, Alan. So in regards to, I'm hearing a lot. I mean, I end up talking to a lot of companies, and both AEC engineering and architects and beyond as well into the manufacturing side. And one of the things that's coming up more and more is that actually they're kind of thinking of themselves or reinventing themselves as technology companies to some capacity. How do you see that, and how do you see you guys, this industry and each company becoming almost a technology arm, or is it going to be a technology company and so on from an architectural perspective?
Those are very real conversations right now in our organization. We do see our future as being more sort of a technology company.
Yeah.
As influences like AI, start to have a more dramatic impact on our business. We're going to have to start leveraging platforms, and the thing that's going to distinguish yourself in the environment is your platform, right? It's the uniqueness of your platform, the way your platform services your clients. So it's a real conversation that we're having right now. It's just, it's not an overnight transition. It's something that you have to do mindfully, leveraging all of the things that you're learning, doing it in context, and doing it with a clear vision. Because if you try to do it ad hoc, you just end up with a bunch of different pieces that don't talk to each other. And that's why game engines is such an important part of these things, because they're kind of an aggregator of technologies that allow you to come out with a solid, unique piece of technology.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, definitely same here. Our firm is really heavily investing in technology. We actually have our own digital practice group, which I'm a member of, and really it feels a lot like working inside the group feels a lot like being inside a VR tech startup inside an architectural firm. What's really great about that is that we have direct access to our clients, which are the architects, so we can really fine-tune the software for their needs. And I think that the firm and the industry is recognizing that there is value in having technology-focused people inside of a firm. In the same way that, again, in visual effects, there's a lot of companies, and it kind of ebbs and flows, but where you can just use like off-the-shelf software and hire a bunch of artists and kind of do your thing just based on what other people have developed for you. But once you kind of start really pushing the bar, you realize, it would be really great to have some proprietary tools that we can really fine-tune for our needs. And I think that at least some of the larger architectural firms are recognizing that, monetizing that, and really seeing the monetary value for both the firm and the client. That's a big challenge. I think that the way we view it is we're in it for the long haul. As many of you are in VR, we're very early, and there is a benefit and a risk to being early. But we are not going to give up, and we want to use VR less as a gimmick or a sales gimmick, and really as a serious design tool for creatives to make amazing spaces for all of us to live in. That's kind of the base case for HGA's investment in VR, and so as a result, I think we're going to continue to push the technology and hire more people who are tech savvy in our firm.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we're going to become more efficient consumers of technology, and I think we're positioned in a way that having technologists in-house as prototypers of technology is good because of our kind of connection to the real-world problems that we're experiencing, our people are experiencing in the field. But I don't see us becoming a technology company, because if everybody becomes a technology company, who's going to actually do any real physical work? And that is our core business, is putting work in place. And so that's I think how I see it.
It's a good point. We still need construction companies, to put things together.
We can all just live in virtual reality cities. What are you talking about?
Yeah. So before we open up to the floor, and we have a few minutes left here, so let's, from your perspectives, how do you see technologies like, like gaming engines playing a part of your industry and part of the AEC space, and how do you see Unity being part of that as well? Alan, I'll start with Anupam first.
Oh, okay. So like for me, the biggest thing is, well, maybe not the biggest thing, but something that really stands out for me in interacting with the architects that I interact with and our clients is, so like, I came from like a gaming and visual effects background where things were like really sexy and fun and it was entertaining, and there was a game that you really got addicted to, and it was great. And you go into an architectural firm, it's like, I know that everybody's really passionate about their jobs, but a lot of times designing a space, because you're kind of like, when you use CAD tools, it's very mechanical, you're just punching in numbers. I think the creative freedom of designing, in the same way that an artist would paint on a canvas, is really missing now from our kind of workflows and methodologies of design. And from a personal standpoint, without looking at the business stuff side of it, like I'm really excited about VR's ability to just have fun in a space. And even though you're doing something serious, like important, like designing a building, you're still really being creative and you're having fun and you're using your physical senses, your eyes, your gaze, your hand gestures to literally build the space around you, which I think is super fun. And if you've ever used like Tilt Brush, for example, to just draw lines and curves in space, even something so simple like that is so engaging. And I would love to see VR being used to make not just more efficient buildings, but really bring the art back in architecture again.
Cool. Will?
Yeah, I think
we only have a couple of minutes.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I think Unity, Unity is going to be around in this industry for a while, for sure. I think game engines in general, because we're only really starting to use them as of just a couple of years ago, and the value is obviously there. Whether or not how those engines kind of evolve is kind of what my question is. How are they going to integrate into the other tools that we use in the AEC industry and become more connected and less of a dead end? It kind of remains to be seen.
I see all of our tools being based on some sort of kind of game engine structured platform, because the game engine, because Unity is an aggregator again of all of the different technologies, so we can take and are taking the output from AI programs, the output from what we're capturing in IoT, the output from what we're collecting from visual input or putting out as visual output, and leveraging the cloud. The game engine allows us to bring all of these things together into one product and to do them all at once. And I see our architectural tools becoming game engine based across the board, because it's not just about architecture. So much happens within that context. You have to bring them all together to make them powerful.
Thank you, Alan. So I'd like to open up. Does anyone have any questions for the panel? I think there's a microphone there, or we can hand one over if you don't mind. Thank you.
So a question I had was, you guys mentioned wanting to get data and feedback from using VR or XR to work with the different companies and firms that you're working with. So what types of data, other than just like really raw analytics, what types of data would you like to see coming out of virtual reality design?
Well, we've got currently, with partners, we've developed tools that allow us to track gaze, for instance, develop heat maps from within, VR environments to track the way that that users are engaging with these VR spaces now. I think that as photorealism, going back to it really quick, as those environments become more photorealistic and people start to engage them more as they would engage their real world. Without the photorealism, you can't really gain full presence, right? And without that full presence, you can't really gauge what people are actually looking at and for what reason. So we're seeing, our Newport office is doing a lot of great work developing these platforms to allow us to audit the way that people are engaging with these VR spaces in the hopes of collecting that data and leveraging it in the real spaces that we're designing.
Cool.
I think to add on that, architecture is designed primarily in Revit these days. It's a modeling and drafting program. And the way that's set up is there's all these objects and entities that have all sorts of metadata associated with it. So once you bring an FBX into Unity, it's difficult to maintain all that additional data that maybe manufacturing or product data with that. And so then so being able to round trip that data and keep the fidelity of that data is, I think, really important, something we struggle with right now.
So, I mean, I know we're up for time. Are we okay for 5 more minutes? As we're the last session, I think we're going to be closing out, right? Okay. We'll take one more question.
Thanks. Actually, my question is actually related to what you were touching on there. I'm actually very curious about what the specific pipeline is from getting something from Revit to Unity. I know some of the files, I'm familiar with Revit and Unity, of course, and I know some of my files get pretty huge, and I also like to get a lot of that metadata, and some of that is, as you mentioned, lost with FBX. So I'm curious what you guys do in terms of getting not only the data and also the mesh to be a little cleaner.
Yeah, sure. So, there's a bunch of different ways you can do it. We typically take things from Revit into 3ds Max and actually import the Revit file into 3ds Max. And then you can have a lot of control over kind of the mesh decimation. We'll also pipeline things through Rhino. So we'd be doing a DWG export directly out of Revit and bringing that into Rhino. And then Rhino has lots of tools that you can use to help further decimate meshes or organize your files more better. But it's often kind of just whatever the project needs.
And then there are tools that have been written right now. So VIMaec has written a couple of tools which enable you to go from a cloud-based service directly from Revit into Unity, and those tools will be widely available from a perspective of supporting further products as well, like SketchUp and Rhino and others as well.
Those are available already?
The Revit to Unity Direct is open and available now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just to recap, so if you have some design that you want to go through within VR, that current process of round tripping where you make a change for a client, that could take days. That's not something that someone's going to be like, oh, I want to make this change.
So we've got a process that you can actually take straight away right now.
Okay.
Take your Revit file, load it to our portal. It will take a little while, 15 minutes or so, and it will give you out basically a Unity package.
Okay.
And that's a native asset file with broken down lights, materials, UV maps, textures, the lot.
Is that a commercial offering?
It is commercial offering.
Good to know.
Yeah, fully available.
Yeah, so like the optimization pipeline, instead of hand optimizing it, there are tools now that automate that process. And for me, the real key is, at this point, is speed. Rather than waiting a couple of minutes, how can we just wait a few seconds, That's like the big challenge right now, so.
Cool.
Have you guys looked at using a Cave or a motion platform like the Vertuix Omni to kind of avoid the strap and HMD on your face, for your clients?
We've used Caves for quite a bit now, but they're tricky things to use, and most often they end up being like like a kind of a showpiece rather than a productivity piece. We've engaged with a lot of clients that are just transitioning now to room scale VR.
Thank you.
So, two-part question. How do you see, so first of all, great presentation. I think all of you guys have a lot of experience working with almost like inside teams within different firms. I wonder if you can speak a little bit about the role of the startups and people that are just getting into the space that perhaps are not within a specific firm, and what role do you think we can play within that space?
So great question. Even being inside a specific firm, we kind of do sometimes feel like a little startup because we're we're working with people who maybe are not very well versed with the technology. Are we all okay? But I would say my suggestion is to really get to know the problems that are out there and get to form relationships with architects and architectural firms.
Well, if you want to come and ask us over here, I think the AV team need to clear up as well. So thank you all for joining, and thank you for the panel. Can you please give a round of applause? Thank you. Of course.